The Illinois is a great place to get actual news and keep your eye on the ball for the state of Illinois. How do I get it? Let's say I'm new. How do I get it?
Well, you turn your World Wide Web machine to theillinois.com, ILLINOIZE.com, and we post stories every day and have our daily newsletter that goes out to our list every morning around 5 a.m.
All right, so you're writing about a budget, amongst many things. You're writing about a budget surplus that we have or we don't have. Should I use the word allegedly in front of budget surplus?
May not have any more.
Okay.
I think is probably the big question.
All right, so what is the deal that the state made that could wipe out whatever budget surplus we had?
Well, so the context here is, the state passed a budget at the end of May for the fiscal year that started July 1st that gave them very little wiggle room. And there were a lot of questions about, did the General Assembly give enough money for things that they have said are priorities? Like they cut the immigrant health insurance program that has been in the news, by half, and told the governor to, well, you can figure it out. But there were a lot of concerns that the new contract for AFSCME, which is the state union that covers about 35,000 employees, was coming due around July 1st, and there were it was very unclear whether the state had enough money for paying employees what they were likely going to get in what might be a friendly contract. And they agreed on a deal in the early morning of July 1st, and nobody has said a word about it. The governor hasn't said a word publicly about it. And we got our hands on a memo from AFSCME Council 31 last week that kind of outlined some of the details of it. And it gives state employees an 18% in raises over the next 3 years, and a one-time stipend of like $1,200 that'll cost the state something like $48 million one time, which, some people say will wipe out the very narrow budget surplus that we had in this new budget completely.
The word surplus and budget in Illinois generally don't fit in a sentence. Is this good politics or bad? Because all of us immediately jump to, well, here we go. Illinois kissing butts on union again and spending monies we don't need to spend.
And as someone who kind of writes on the center right, I've made a lot of my friends on the right unhappy by sending some bouquets to the Pritzker administration for being relatively fiscally responsible. And yes, they've been helped by the income tax increase that went into effect right before Pritzker got elected. Of course, there were piles and piles and piles of federal cash that came in during the pandemic. But the bottom line is you still have to spend that money responsibly. And we now have $2 billion in the state's rainy day fund. We've had credit upgrades. There are, you can argue about priorities and what they're spending money on and what they, whether they're paying down pension debt well enough, et cetera. You can have policy arguments about that, but we're not in the Rauner or Blagojevich days where we were bouncing checks essentially.
Jane, Nick, jump in.
Well, we're talking headlines here, and this is a new one from today, and we're talking about the ending cash bail. And in the Illinois, you're saying, hey, it might not be as bad as we all thought.
So the bill that got passed that started this whole thing, the one that was passed in early 2021, was a real mess. Tons of contradictions, gave judges no wiggle room in holding bad people awaiting trial. And that was the law that was challenged in court, that ended up essentially being part of this whole thing. The legislature late last year made a big fix. It was actually a bill that was mostly shepherded by a state senator from Champaign named Scott Bennett, who died tragically about 3 weeks after it passed. And it, I put the list in the story that's on the website this morning of these huge charges that weren't included in the original bill that are included in a bill in the law now that a judge can hold someone on. So it gives judges a lot more leeway. Is it perfect? Probably not. But there are a lot of prosecutors, Republican and Democrat, that will tell you that cash bail isn't the issue here. It's that judges need to have the ability to hold someone that's a risk. And the first version of the law gave them no wiggle room, no leeway on a lot of really bad offenses. And I think you'll see that it may not be so bad under the version that's going to go into effect in September.
Last word, Nick?
Well, but just on that, you've got Republican leaders down there now saying we got to have a special session because that list of offenses that judges can have some wiggle room on should be expanded beyond what it is or what's spelled out now. Do you think that it's going to go anywhere?
Yeah, I'd like a pony.
Yeah.
Oh, you would?
It's not going to happen. I mean, this law is in place. Republicans can shout from the rooftops all they want, but it's not going to happen.
It's the Illinois. How do you spell that?
The Illinois, ILLINOIZE.com.
All right. Thanks for coming on, Patrick.